Hi guys, Jonathan Ferguson, Keeper of Firearms and Artillery for the Royal Armouries here. I've been asked to go back to the trailer 2 to be precise, for No Time to Die, the new Bond movie, very much delayed of course, and see what we can see in terms of weaponry. Now, I did watch this trailer when it dropped, but it's been a long time, so coming to this fairly fresh. If you'd like to follow along, it is the version from the official channel. Trailer 2, I'll be starting at 16 seconds just as the Universal logo fades in. So let's see what we can see. And we're instantly pausing there because I've glimpsed the first firearms in the trailer in the hands of some operatives rappelling or abseiling down a skyscraper. Very brief, very hard to be sure, but the configuration says some sort of AKS-74U or something close to that in a rifle. It's in a rifle caliber. If you had it to my head, I'd say it was an AKS-74U. Moving on.
James, fate draws us back together. Now your enemy is my enemy.
His name is Safin.
And what does he want?
Revenge. Me.
When her secret finds its way out, it'll be the death of you.
You can imagine why I've come back to play.
There's a young lady in Santiago I want you to meet.
You're late.
When you're ready.
And by lucky hap, I have managed to pause at 0:53, just as Bond is chucking a gun at a lady, which is an MP7. Appears to be the Mp7A1. He's also got in his hands some sort of full-size service pistol, which I'm guessing / hoping we see later. I think we do. Okay. And very briefly we see, and then in the next shot, she's holding a pistol in her other hand, and it looks like Bond's PPK, which for some reason he insists on carrying these days. It's an obsolescent design at the very least. Anyway, so she ends up firing 2 guns, one in each hand, dual wielding as we tend to say. MP7 in the left, what I believe is the PPK in the right. The way it's edited makes it seem a bit like that she's firing the MP7 on semi-automatic. I'd be surprised. Action movies love automatic fire. Moving on. Nope, sorry, tell a lie. She does fire bursts from the MP7. Firing guns with both hands is not advisable, but if she happened to be holding both and an enemy broke in at that moment, you're probably not going to waste time switching to dropping the pistol, extending the stock and adopting a new position and hold with the MP7. You probably would just fire what's in your hands. So it's one of the more plausible moments for firing 2 guns and going,
Salute.
And then at 58 seconds, we see Bond in classic Bond mode, in his tux, firing what I believe to be a SIG P226, or variant, close variant of that, which is interesting. So whether he's taken that from someone else and thrown his PPK to his friend there, we'll find out, I guess, at some point.
I met your new 00. She's a disarming young woman.
The young woman, the new 00 agent that we're introduced to, is armed with an HK MP7 as well. But she's kitted out, and I have seen the posters and promotional material with her MP7. That looks like she was rigged out for that weapon. So I don't know where the MP7 comes from that the lady in the dress ends up with. I don't think we can puzzle that one out just from the trailer. Both have, this one has a suppressor on it. I think we'll see it again later, so moving on. Actually, no, we'll pause there, because the sound effect there did not sound like a suppressed firearm. surprisingly. Hollywood normally goes for the old pew pew, with some notable exceptions. That sounded like a generic sound effect. It's quite possible, very likely in fact, that when this was originally put together, they hadn't quite finished sound and visual effects, so that might change. Or that might just be what they've gone with. But I think that's a bit too... Although silencers do not silence, we know this, that report doesn't sound quite right to me. It should be more muted than that. Moving on.
I get why you shot him.
Yeah, well, everyone tries at least once.
Okay, now, this I remember spotting before. So about 1:09, and if you spool on to 1:10 and use the arrow keys on the keyboard, not the arrow keys, the arrow brackets, if you like. The comma and the full stop key, that would be the period key, that would make more sense. You can, frame by frame, to the point where, hilariously, the rubber stunt rifle that Bond is holding, or his stunt man, bends as he hits the deck. Now, I don't want to be too harsh to the filmmakers here, because what are you going to do? You can't make... stunt guns are made of rubber for a reason. You don't want to hurt the actor or the stunt person. And you don't want to damage the weapon if you're hitting a concrete floor. So, but here you can see the suppressor it's compressing at the end by the look of it. So this will be the very lightest foam rubber version of a stunt gun, and then the whole suppressor is, and the barrel actually, is deflected upwards. It's bent. Very, very common. It's so brief, I don't think they would even bother to try and fix that. The only way to fix it is when you're filming, to use a very rigid stunt gun, which kind of defeats the object of using one in the first place. So it's more of a little quirk. It's not... I don't think it's even really an error, to be honest with you. Even modern movies are not perfect. And this is very rapid fire here, as it were. At 1:12, we see our new 00 firing her MP7 one-handed, which is, daft, but nonetheless it's an action movie, and it's got much more of a classic modern Hollywood suppressed submachine gun sound effect, like a sewing machine on steroids, basically, which is not really accurate. Again, the final sound effect may well change, but it's a different sound effect than the louder one that was in the previous shot.
James Bond.
Here we are with yet another weapon at 1:17, and anyone that's seen the trailer will remember this. We've got a version of the old machine guns coming out of the Aston Martin gag. This time they are, and I think this is exactly the same configuration as Skyfall, actually. We have two very mini guns. It's possible that they're meant to be the 5.56mm micro gun, which is a real thing, does exist. I don't think it's in service anywhere, but it was created. But in reality, of course, there's no way you'd fit the gun. You'd need an additional heavy-duty battery, the ammunition supply and feed. I don't think that's going to fit in the wings / engine bay of this relatively small sports car, especially not in this retractable mode. So I'm assuming that all of the firing we're going to see is done with CGI and not with blanks, because I don't think they would have done this practically. It doesn't make any sense to do that.
We both eradicate people.
And yet another gun here. So the bad guy is one-handed firing again. A VZ-58 derivative. It's a modern version, very compact, with black furniture on it. So it looks very modern, but it is the 50s design that the 58 designation would imply. It's often mistaken in its original form for the AK. Similar layout, same curvature to the magazine because it fires the same cartridge, but the only thing it shares is that cartridge. Everything else about it is different. much more obvious with this version. Quite an interesting choice, I think. There may well be some deep lore reason for that. I don't know the origin of the character, but it's nice to see some variety.
To make the world a better place, I just want to be a little...
Okay, 126, we get a much better view of Bond's AR-15. And when I say AR-15, I don't mean the specific civilian semi-automatic models. I mean AR-15 as in the umbrella family name for the whole family of weapons. This appears to be either a US Navy Mark 18 with I think it's a 10.5-inch barrel with a long suppressor attached to it, or a clone of that configuration, which is, if anything, more likely. It's much harder for movie armourers and indeed for museums to get hold of current service weapons from other countries or even from their own country. They're usually needed for other purposes. So this is very likely an armourer build aping the Mark 18. And given that we've seen a P226, it's possible Bond's getting kitted out by the Americans here. Just a guess. He's got an EOTech, I think a 552, can't quite see from the resolution, and not much else. Other than, and we see those in the goof earlier, two weird bracket things sticking up from the 12 o'clock rail on the quad handguard rail system. And I don't know what those are supposed to be, quite honestly. They can't be iron sights, I don't think, and shouldn't be if they are. They don't look, they're not sights for a grenade launcher because he hasn't got one fitted. They almost look like brackets for some sort of accessory, but there isn't anything in them. I'm kind of intrigued as to what those are. So if we don't find out by the end of the trailer, answers in the comments, please.
Tidier.
And there's the PPK again at 129. So he gets his PPK back. It really is not the best weapon to be using. It's the 380 ACP, probably PPK-S actually, although we can't really tell from what we've seen so far. But that's what's more easily available depending where you're filming. And at least they have latterly gone with the 380 version of the pistol because the original caliber is just far too tiny to be effective in this kind of situation. It's meant to be, well, it was chosen because it was ideal for a Cold War spy to keep on them concealed for very close-up work like assassinations or for personal defense. It doesn't make any sense for running and gunning in the way that we see here. But hey, that's been the case since they brought the PPK back for nostalgia reasons.
Come on, Bond. Where the hell are you?
Just need to pause at 139 to admire the nice arty shot in the tunnel, replicating, of course, the opening credits scene of every Bond movie where he turns and fires 1950s, 60s style, one-handed with his arm thrown out for balance, pretty much from the hip, which is, as I've said before, it is a genuine technique of the time. It would get even more exaggerated than that. The version that the FBI taught was to go lower down to present a smaller target, legs wide apart, arms wide apart, firing one-handed, looking where you're shooting, reaction shooting, and that's this. He's doing it in a less exaggerated way, but he's still following that 1960s, 70s, 80s recommended form of close quarter pistol shooting. That's not taught anymore. I know Bond is a bit older in these films, but he's not old enough that he would have been taught how to shoot that way. And you certainly wouldn't step into an open space like that, the middle of it, totally exposed to any enemy fire, and fire one shot unsighted. It's absolute nonsense, but it looks amazing.
You ever flown one of these?
Nope.
Harder to tell the good from bad, villains from heroes these days.
What is it?
You don't know what this is. He's going to kill millions.
159, we have what at first glance looks like a different gun, but I'm pretty sure it's the same MP7 we saw earlier, with the front foregrip folded up. And she's just holding the fore end, suppressor of course, and what looks to be the Russian Cobra red dot sight, which is an odd choice.
If we don't do this...
So we've got quite a nice close-up here of Bond's Mark 18 or lookalike. Annoyingly, we can't quite see what those accessories clamped to the top of the rail are, but we can see that the EOTech is a 551, I believe. The shorter, more compact of the original series of EOTechs. And he's got some sort of magazine clamp set up. Could even be a fast mag, but if so, he's covering it up with his hand. He's using rather an old-fashioned magazine well hold here. He quite possibly did learn, or would have learned, perhaps he would have learned that. These days it's pretty frowned upon. In fact, you want your hand as far out on that handguard as possible for control. But at least it shows a bit of personality. He hasn't just gone through a boot camp and is aping the very latest modern techniques. Bond is quite long in the tooth in these movies. Why wouldn't he use a slightly more old-fashioned but still effective way of holding his weapon?
There will be nothing left to save.
An interesting one at about 2 minutes 9. 007 comes out of a building, he flicks a stock open, I think is what he's doing from that very quick shot, and then we get a frontal view of, I think, another modernised AKS-74U. I think. It's definitely got a curved AK style magazine. Doesn't look curved enough to be 760 by 39. It's got the right sort of size and shape. It's a little bit hard to say. Moving on. And at 2:16 we get a very good view of that P226 that Bond has at one point. At 2:19 the villain has got what appears to be a Beretta 92. 92F, 92FS, M9, with some sort of light laser module fitted under the barrel. And then he's again firing one-handed, as he does at one point earlier into the ice, his stubby VZ58 variant. And then we get some more action from, again, what I believe is an AKS-74U, or clone thereof, with its metal triangular stock folded to the side. It's got a Cobra red dot on it. I wonder if that's how the Cobra ends up on the MP7, in that it may have been selected for use on the former Soviet firearms, and somebody put it on the MP7 because it looked good. I'm totally speculating. I don't want to cast any aspersions. And that's been fired through the windscreen of a vehicle. And then right at the end, blink and you'll miss it, but we've seen it in promotional material, Bond has got a Beretta ARX 160 in a short barrel variant with the grenade launcher fitted to it, 40mm grenade launcher. Again, something relatively new and interesting in movie land, and I do quite like the way that this vehicle is coming at him, and he reacts almost like I might in a first-person shooter when something like that happens, and you just kind of fire at the vehicle as it disappears away. I don't know, not exactly a comedy moment, but something a bit unusual. So there we are. I think that is it. Let's just see if there's any sting at the end. Nope, so that's it. So out in November this year, I think. Do check that. So fun to see, as always, the range of guns that are cast in the movie, based on where they're supposed to have come from, who's supposed to be carrying them, what their background is. Sometimes movies don't care about any of that, but the ones that I enjoy the most do, and they choose props and configure them appropriately to the characters, just like the costume department will create costumes that fit the character, fit the scene, fit the time period. So we'll see what happens. I live in hope that by the end of the movie, assuming Bond is still alive and decides he wants to stay in the service, that he finally gives up that PPK. But I'm not holding my breath. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like to see more of this kind of thing, we will be continuing to do that on our own channel here at the Royal Armouries. And if you're into video games, we have what is now quite a long-running collaboration with the guys over at GameSpot, with me talking nonsense about guns in video games. So you can go and check that out as well. Please do come and visit one of our 3 museums here in the UK if you can. Have a look at our website, enjoy our social media content, and if you do, you might like to send us a donation, or perhaps join our membership scheme. Details of that will be in the description. I'll see you again next time. Thanks.